The transport ship Crimson Dawn shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull groaning under the stress of rapid deceleration. Captain Marcus Chun gripped his command chair, watching the view screen flicker to life with the image of a massive space station orbiting a purple-hued planet. The station looked like nothing he'd ever seen before. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Well, that's not in any of our databases," muttered Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the navigation console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she tried to identify their location. Marcus had been commanding cargo runs between Earth's outer colonies for 8 years, but this was definitely not where they were supposed to be. The hyperspace jump had gone wrong somehow, throwing them completely off course. According to their instruments, they were somewhere in the Andromeda Spiral, thousands of light years from the nearest human settlement. "Captain," called out Chief Engineer Rodriguez from his station near the back of the bridge. "We've got a problem. The hyperspace drive is completely fried. Whatever happened during that jump, we're not going anywhere fast." Before Marcus could respond, the communications array crackled to life. A series of musical tones filled the bridge, followed by what sounded like clicks and whistles. Then, surprisingly, a voice spoke in perfect English. "Unknown vessel. You have entered Zephyrian space without authorization. State your purpose or prepare to be destroyed." Marcus looked around at his crew of 12. They were traders and engineers, not soldiers. The Crimson Dawn had basic defensive shields and a single pulse cannon that was mostly used for clearing space debris. Whatever was out there, they were completely outmatched. "This is Captain Marcus Chun of the human vessel Crimson Dawn. We're not here by choice. Our hyperspace drive malfunctioned and threw us off course. We mean no harm and request safe passage to make repairs." The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. Then the voice returned, but it sounded different now, more curious than threatening. "Human? We have heard rumors of your species, but this is the first time any have appeared in our territory. You will dock at Base 7 of the orbital station. Any attempt to deviate from the prescribed course will result in immediate destruction." A new set of coordinates appeared on their navigation display, along with a flight path that led directly to the massive station. Marcus had no choice but to follow it. As they drew closer, the true scale of the structure became apparent. The station was easily the size of a small moon, with thousands of ships of various designs docked at its surface. Some looked sleek and metallic, others appeared to be grown rather than built, with surfaces that rippled like living skin. "Captain," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist. "I'm reading at least 40 different energy signatures from those ships. This isn't just one species, it's some kind of massive alliance or federation." Marcus nodded grimly. They were about to make first contact, not with one alien race, but with what appeared to be an entire galactic community. The weight of representing humanity in this moment wasn't lost on him. The docking procedure was surprisingly smooth. Magnetic clamps secured the Crimson Dawn to the station, and atmospheric pressure equalized with a soft hiss. Marcus had barely finished securing the ship's systems when a delegation appeared outside their airlock. Through the reinforced window, he could see 3 beings waiting in what appeared to be a pressurized docking tube. The one in the center was tall and willowy, with blue-tinged skin and large dark eyes. Flanking it were 2 others, one that looked like a walking tree with bark-like skin, and another that seemed to be made of shifting geometric patterns of light. "Well," Marcus said to his crew, "I guess this is where we find out if humans are welcome in this part of the galaxy." He cycled through the airlock alone, following standard first contact protocols. The 3 aliens waited patiently as he emerged, and the central figure stepped forward. "I am Counselor Veth of the Zephyrian Coalition," it said, its voice carrying the same musical quality they'd heard over the communication system. "You claim to be human. Our records indicate your species is controversial." "Controversial how?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The tree-like being spoke next, its voice like wind rustling through leaves. "Your people are known to us through reports from the Outer Rim territories. They speak of humans as either great heroes or terrible destroyers, depending on who tells the story. The geometric light being flickered, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like harmonic crystals ringing together. Some say humans are the most violent species ever encountered. Others claim they are the most honorable. The reports are contradictory. Counselor Veth raised a hand for silence. Regardless of these reports, you are here now, and you have requested aid. The Coalition has protocols for such situations. You will be granted temporary sanctuary while your ship is repaired, but you and your crew will be confined to this station. Do you accept these terms? Marcus nodded. It wasn't like they had much choice. Over the next several days, Marcus and his crew found themselves in a strange situation. They were technically prisoners, but they were treated more like honored guests. The station was a marvel of engineering and cooperation, with dozens of species working together in apparent harmony. Dr. Vasquez was particularly fascinated by the diversity. Captain, I've identified at least 60 different species just in the sections we've been allowed to visit. Some are carbon-based like us, others are silicon-based, and a few seem to be pure energy beings. The level of cooperation here is unprecedented. Lieutenant Kim had been working with the station's engineers to repair their hyperspace drive. The technology here is incredible, she reported. Some of these species have been spacefaring for millions of years. They're sharing techniques and knowledge that could advance human technology by centuries. But it was Chief Rodriguez who brought the most disturbing news. Captain, I've been talking to some of the other engineers. There's something big happening. The station is on high alert, though they're trying to hide it. Ships are coming and going at all hours, and everyone seems nervous about something. Marcus filed this information away, but his curiosity was answered sooner than expected. On their 5th day aboard the station, Counselor Veth approached him with an unusual request. Captain Shun, your presence here has created quite a stir among the Coalition leadership. They would like to meet with you personally. I'm honored, Marcus replied carefully, but I should mention that I'm just a cargo hauler. If this is some kind of diplomatic contact, you might want to wait until we can contact our government. Veth's large eyes seemed to sparkle with something that might have been amusement. I think you misunderstand the situation, Captain. The Coalition leadership doesn't want to meet with you for diplomatic purposes. They want to offer you a job. This caught Marcus completely off guard. A job? What kind of job? The kind that involves stopping a war, Veth replied seriously, and possibly saving the lives of billions of people across multiple species. The next morning, Marcus found himself in what could only be described as a war room. The chamber was enormous, with a holographic display at its center showing what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of local space. Dozens of beings from various species moved around the display, pointing at different sections and engaging in rapid, multilingual conversations. At the head of the room sat the Coalition High Council, 7 beings representing the major species in the Alliance. Marcus recognized Counselor Veth among them, but the others were completely alien to him. The being at the center of the council rose as Marcus approached. It was tall and regal, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and gold. When it spoke, its voice carried an authority that commanded immediate attention. Captain Shun, I am High Counselor Zerath. We have asked you here because the Coalition faces its greatest threat in over 1,000 years. The holographic display shifted, showing a region of space marked in angry red. 6 months ago, an aggressive species calling themselves the Hegemony began a campaign of conquest against our outer territories. They have already destroyed 12 worlds and enslaved the populations of 7 others. Another counselor, this one resembling a massive insect with crystalline wings, added, Our military forces have been unable to stop their advance. Their technology is unlike anything we've encountered, and their tactics are brutal. High Counselor Zerath gestured to the display. 3 days ago, they issued an ultimatum. The Coalition must surrender completely within 30 standard days, or they will begin systematically exterminating entire planetary populations. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind automatically analyzing the strategic situation. Years of commanding transport ships had given him a good understanding of logistics and fleet movements. What he saw didn't look good for the coalition. "I'm sorry for your situation," he said carefully, "but I don't understand what this has to do with me or my crew. We're civilian merchants, not military personnel." High Counselor Zarath and the other council members exchanged glances. Finally, Zarath spoke again. "Captain, in the past week, we have received intelligence reports from our scouts near hegemony territory. They describe a most unusual development." The display zoomed in on a specific system, showing what appeared to be the aftermath of a massive space battle. Debris fields stretched across several astronomical units, and the scattered remains of hundreds of ships drifted in the void. This was the hegemony's primary staging area for their next offensive, Zarath continued. 2 days ago, it looked very different. There were over 300 hegemony warships stationed here, along with their mobile command fortress. Marcus leaned forward, studying the destruction. "What happened? Did your forces mount a successful counterattack?" "No," said Counselor Veth quietly. "Our forces are nowhere near strong enough to accomplish something like this. According to our scouts, this entire fleet was destroyed by a single ship." The blood drained from Marcus's face as he began to understand where this conversation was heading. "The ship was identified as human in origin," Zarath continued. "Our intelligence suggests it was crewed by only one individual. The hegemony is calling him the Mortal. Apparently, their word for humans translates roughly to mortal ones in their language." Marcus stared at the display, his mind racing. "You're telling me that one human in one ship destroyed an entire hegemony fleet?" "Not just destroyed," corrected the insect-like counselor. "According to the reports, the engagement lasted less than 20 minutes. The hegemony ships never even managed to land a significant hit on the human vessel." "But that's impossible," Marcus protested. "Human ships aren't that advanced. Our most powerful warships couldn't take on more than a handful of enemy vessels at once." High Counselor Zarath leaned forward. "Captain, what can you tell us about human military capabilities? Are there weapons or technologies that your species possesses that we should know about?" Marcus shook his head. "I'm not military, so I don't have access to classified information. But from what I know, human technology is good, but not miraculous. We've got kinetic weapons, plasma cannons, fusion bombs, nothing that could single-handedly destroy a fleet of that size." "Then perhaps," said Veth thoughtfully, "the advantage lies not in technology, but in the human himself." The council chamber fell silent as they absorbed this possibility. Finally, Zarath spoke again. "Captain Chun, the coalition finds itself in an unprecedented situation. We are facing an enemy we cannot defeat through conventional means. But now, a member of your species has demonstrated that the hegemony can be beaten. You want me to find this human," Marcus realized. "More than that," Zarath replied. "We want you to bring him here. The coalition needs to understand how he accomplished what our entire military could not. More importantly, we need his help to save our people." Marcus looked around at the assembled council members, seeing the desperation in their eyes despite their alien features. These beings were facing extinction, and they were looking to humanity, to him, for salvation. "I'll need my ship repaired and fully fueled," he said finally. "And I'll need all the intelligence you have on this human's last known location." "Already arranged," Zarath replied with what might have been relief. "But, Captain, you should know, the region where this human was last seen is deep in contested space. The journey will be extremely dangerous." Marcus nodded grimly. He'd come this far from home by accident, but now he was about to venture even further into the unknown by choice. Somewhere out there, a single human was fighting a war against impossible odds. Marcus just hoped he could find him before it was too late for both the coalition and the mysterious warrior they called the Mortal. As he left the council chamber, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to embark on the most important mission of his life. The fate of multiple civilizations might depend on whether he could locate one human in the vast expanse of space. No pressure at all. The Crimson Dawn moved through hyperspace like a ghost, its newly upgraded systems humming with alien technology that the Coalition engineers had integrated into its human-built framework. Captain Marcus Chun sat in his command chair, studying the star charts that Counselor Veth had provided before their departure. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Kim from the navigation station, "we're approaching the edge of the search zone, dropping to normal space in 30 seconds. Marcus nodded, his fingers drumming nervously on the armrest of his chair. They'd been traveling for 6 days since leaving the Coalition station, following a trail of destroyed hegemony outposts and scattered refugee reports. Each piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Somewhere in this region of space, a single human was conducting what could only be described as a one-man war against an entire alien empire. The stars shifted as they dropped out of hyperspace, and immediately their sensors began picking up debris fields and energy signatures from recent battles. Dr. Vasquez leaned over her console, her face pale as she processed the readings. "Captain, I'm detecting the remains of at least 200 ships in this system alone. The debris patterns suggest they were destroyed within the last week." Chief Engineer Rodriguez whistled low as he examined the tactical display. "Look at the distribution pattern. It's not random. Someone was systematically hunting down every hegemony vessel in this system." Marcus studied the data, trying to piece together what had happened here. The debris fields formed a rough line that stretched from the outer edge of the system toward the fourth planet, suggesting that their mysterious human had encountered a hegemony patrol fleet and systematically destroyed it ship by ship. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim called out, her voice tight with excitement, "I'm picking up a faint energy signature from the fourth planet. It's human." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. After days of following a cold trail, they might finally have found their target. "Take us in, but keep us at a safe distance. If this human really did destroy all these ships single-handedly, I don't want to surprise him." As they approached the planet, more details became visible on their sensors. It was a barren, rocky world with a thin atmosphere and no signs of intelligent life. But orbiting the planet was something that made Marcus's jaw drop. "Is that?" Dr. Vasquez began. "A human dreadnought," Marcus finished, staring at the massive warship displayed on their view screen. "But not like any design I've ever seen." The ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest human warships Marcus knew about. Its hull was sleek and black, studded with weapon emplacements that seemed to blend human and alien technologies. Strange energy patterns danced across its surface, and Marcus could see what looked like self-repair mechanisms working on areas of damage. "That's a Titan-class deep space battleship," Rodriguez said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "I've seen pictures in military journals, but they were supposed to be experimental. The last I heard, Earth only had 3 of them." "Experimental or not, it's real," Marcus replied. "And if the intelligence reports are correct, that ship and its pilot just saved the Coalition from certain defeat." Before he could give orders to attempt communication, their console lit up with an incoming transmission. The voice that came through their speakers was unmistakably human, with a slight Southern American accent. "Unknown vessel. This is Colonel James Mitchell of the Terran Defense Force. You're flying a human ship, but your energy signature shows alien modifications. State your identity and purpose." Marcus took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that could determine the fate of billions of people across multiple species. "Colonel Mitchell, this is Captain Marcus Chun of the merchant vessel Crimson Dawn. We've been sent by the Zephyrian Coalition to find you. They need your help to stop the hegemony invasion." The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Mitchell's voice returned, it carried a note of suspicion. "The Coalition? Captain, I hate to break it to you, but the Coalition surrendered to the hegemony 3 weeks ago. Their entire government was dissolved, and their military forces were absorbed into hegemony slave battalions." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "That's impossible. We just left the Coalition station 6 days ago. Counselor Veth and the High Council sent us to find you. Another pause. Then Mitchell's voice returned with a grim edge. Captain, I think you need to get down here so we can talk face to face. But first, run a deep scan on your ship's computer systems. I have a feeling someone's been feeding you false information. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Dr. Vasquez were aboard a Coalition shuttle, descending through the thin atmosphere of the barren planet toward coordinates that Colonel Mitchell had provided. As they broke through the cloud layer, they could see a temporary camp set up near what appeared to be the remains of a crashed Hegemony Command ship. The shuttle touched down near a prefabricated shelter, and Marcus got his first look at the man who had single-handedly changed the course of an interstellar war. Colonel James Mitchell was in his early 40s, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of everything he'd seen. He wore a modified version of Terran Defense Force armor, with additional equipment that Marcus didn't recognize. Captain Chun, Mitchell said, extending his hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. As they shook hands, Marcus noticed the calluses and scars on Mitchell's fingers, the hands of someone who'd been fighting for a long time. Colonel, I need to ask directly, did you really destroy that entire Hegemony fleet by yourself? Mitchell's expression darkened. 3 fleets, actually. And yes, it was just me. But before we get into that, we need to discuss your situation. Dr. Vasquez, what did your scan of the ship's computers reveal? Dr. Vasquez consulted her portable scanner, her face troubled. We found 17 different infiltration programs hidden in our navigation and communication systems. Someone has been monitoring our position and communications since we left Earth space. The Coalition didn't send you, Mitchell stated. They couldn't have. The Coalition fell 3 weeks ago when the Hegemony infiltrators activated sleeper agents throughout their government. Counselor Veth and most of the High Council are dead. Marcus sank into a nearby chair, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. Then who? The Hegemony sent you, Mitchell said grimly. You've been used as bait to draw me out of hiding. They knew that if a human ship appeared claiming to represent Coalition survivors, I'd eventually make contact. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her scanner. Captain, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching this system. Whatever was tracking us just led a fleet directly to our location. Mitchell moved to a tactical display built into his shelter, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. The display showed dozens of red dots materializing at the edge of the star system. Hegemony warships dropping out of hyperspace in a coordinated assault formation. 68 ships, Mitchell said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. Heavy cruiser class and above. They're not taking any chances this time. Marcus stared at the tactical display in horror. Colonel, we have to get out of here. My ship isn't armed for combat, and even your dreadnought can't take on 68 warships at once. Mitchell turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something in the colonel's eyes that made his blood run cold. Not fear, but a calm, predatory focus that spoke of a man who had been pushed beyond normal human limits. Captain, how much do you know about the Terran Defense Forces Black Operations Division? Black Ops? I thought that was just rumors and conspiracy theories. Far from it, Mitchell replied, moving to what looked like an equipment locker. 3 years ago, I was selected for Project Prometheus, a classified program designed to create super soldiers capable of operating independently in deep space for extended periods. He opened the locker, revealing an array of weapons and equipment that looked like something out of science fiction. They enhanced my reflexes, my tactical processing abilities, and my endurance. Then, they gave me a ship equipped with experimental weapons that technically don't exist. Dr. Vasquez looked fascinated despite the danger. What kind of enhancements? The kind that let me process battlefield information at superhuman speeds and react accordingly, Mitchell replied, pulling on what looked like an advanced targeting system. The kind that let me pilot a capital ship single-handedly while engaging multiple targets simultaneously. Marcus watched in amazement as Mitchell began activating systems throughout the shelter. You're not planning to fight them, are you? 68 ships. Actually, I am, Mitchell interrupted. But not just because I have to, because this is exactly the opportunity I've been waiting for. The tactical display updated, showing that the hegemony fleet had formed a standard blockade formation around the planet. They were being methodical, making sure that nothing could escape before beginning their attack. You see, Captain, the hegemony has made one critical mistake in their war against the coalition species, Mitchell continued, his hands moving across control surfaces with practiced efficiency. They assumed that because humans aren't part of any major galactic alliance, we must be weak and insignificant. Warning klaxons began sounding as the first hegemony ships entered optimal firing range. Mitchell activated a communication link to his dreadnought, which was still in orbit above them. Ida, initiate combat protocol 7. Authorization Mitchell Alpha 77. A synthetic voice responded from the speaker, crisp and emotionless. Combat protocol 7 initiated, Colonel. All systems are nominal. Shall I engage the enemy fleet? Negative. Maintain defensive posture until my arrival. And Ida? Prepare the Prometheus package for deployment. Marcus had no idea what the Prometheus package was, but the AI's response made him nervous. Colonel, I must advise that deployment of the Prometheus package will likely result in complete destruction of all enemy vessels in this system. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Mitchell's smile was cold and utterly without mercy. Ida, these bastards have killed billions of innocent people across dozens of worlds. They've enslaved entire species and turned them into cannon fodder. Yes, I'm certain. He turned to Marcus and Dr. Vasquez. You two need to get to your ship and prepare for immediate departure. Once I engage the hegemony fleet, this system is going to become extremely dangerous. What about you? Marcus asked. I'll be fine. Ida has specific instructions to extract me once the engagement is complete. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. Colonel, if you're really about to engage 68 enemy warships, could you record the battle? For scientific purposes. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Scientific purposes? The coalition species need to understand how you're doing this, she explained. If other humans have these same capabilities, it could change the entire balance of power in this region of space. Mitchell considered this for a moment, then nodded. Ida, transmit full tactical data to Captain Chen's ship during the engagement. Include weapon performance statistics and tactical analysis. Acknowledged, Colonel. As Marcus and Dr. Vasquez hurried back to their shuttle, Mitchell called out one last instruction. Captain, when you return to Earth, and you will return to Earth, tell them that the hegemony has made the mistake of underestimating humanity. Tell them that we're not just another minor species to be conquered. We're something they've never encountered before. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat on the bridge of the Crimson Dawn, watching his tactical display in disbelief as Colonel Mitchell's dreadnought moved into attack position. The hegemony fleet had formed a perfect engagement formation, confident in their numerical superiority. Captain, Lieutenant Kim called out, her voice filled with awe. You need to see this. On the main view screen, Mitchell's ship was changing. Sections of the hull were sliding apart, revealing weapon systems that definitely weren't in any human military database. Energy began building around the ship like a visible aura, and Marcus could see space itself beginning to distort near the vessel. Ida's voice came through their communication system. Captain Shun, please maintain your current position. Combat engagement will commence in 30 seconds. Marcus gripped his command chair as he watched a single human warship prepare to engage an entire enemy fleet. He had no idea what Colonel Mitchell was about to unleash, but he had a feeling that the hegemony was about to learn why underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. The Battle of Kepler's Edge was about to begin. The space around Kepler's Edge erupted in brilliant flashes of energy as Colonel Mitchell's dreadnought engaged the hegemony fleet. Captain Marcus Chun watched in stunned silence from the bridge of the Crimson Dawn as the battle unfolded before them, a battle that defied everything he thought he knew about space combat. Mitchell's ship, The Prometheus moved through space with an almost supernatural grace, its weapons systems firing in patterns that seemed to anticipate the enemy's movements before they made them. Streams of exotic energy tore through hegemony vessels like they were made of paper, while the Prometheus itself seemed to phase in and out of normal space, making it nearly impossible for the enemy to target effectively. "Captain Dr. Vasquez called out from her station, her voice filled with scientific excitement despite the deadly light show outside. "The energy readings from Colonel Mitchell's ship are off the charts. He's using weapons that operate on principles I've never seen before." Lieutenant Kim was frantically trying to track the battle on her tactical display, but the Prometheus was moving so fast that their sensors could barely keep up. "Sir, I count 12 enemy ships destroyed in the first 3 minutes. The Colonel's ship is engaging targets at ranges that shouldn't be possible with conventional weapons." Marcus watched as the hegemony fleet tried to adapt their formation to counter the lone human vessel. They were spreading out, trying to force Mitchell to engage multiple targets simultaneously while preventing him from using their own ships as cover. It was a sound tactical decision that should have worked against any normal opponent. It didn't work against Colonel Mitchell. The Prometheus suddenly split into 3 identical vessels, each one engaging a different section of the enemy fleet with the same devastating effectiveness. Marcus rubbed his eyes, certain he was seeing things, but his instruments confirmed what looked impossible. There were now 3 human dreadnoughts in the battle space. "Ida," Marcus called out over the communication channel. "What are we seeing? Has the Prometheus somehow duplicated itself?" The AI's voice responded with its characteristic calm efficiency. "The Prometheus is equipped with experimental holographic projection technology. The 2 additional vessels you see are solid light constructs capable of independent operation. Each projection maintains 75% of the original vessel's combat effectiveness." Dr. Vasquez nearly fell out of her chair. "Solid light constructs? That's theoretical physics. The energy requirements alone should be impossible. Human ingenuity has a way of making the impossible merely improbable," Ida replied, and Marcus could swear he heard a note of pride in the synthetic voice. The battle was turning into a massacre. The hegemony ships, despite their numerical advantage, were being systematically destroyed by tactics they couldn't counter and weapons they couldn't defend against. Their formation was collapsing as commanders tried desperately to organize a coherent response to an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Then, something changed in the enemy fleet's behavior. Instead of continuing to attack, half of the remaining ships began falling back toward the edge of the system, while the others moved to form a defensive screen. "They're retreating," Lieutenant Kim observed. "No," Marcus replied grimly, studying the tactical display. "They're buying time for something else." His suspicion was confirmed when massive hyperspace signatures began appearing throughout the system. Not more ships. These signatures were far too large for any vessel. As the distortions cleared, Marcus found himself staring at something that made his blood run cold. 3 enormous structures had materialized in the system, each one the size of a small moon. They were clearly artificial, covered in weapons emplacements and energy projectors that were already beginning to charge. Hegemony fortress stations, designed specifically for fleet-scale engagements. "Ida," Marcus called out, his voice tight with concern. "Can the Prometheus handle those fortresses?" Analysis indicates a 14% probability of mission success against 3 fortress-class stations without additional support. The AI replied with disturbing calm. Marcus watched as the fortress stations began launching clouds of fighters and drone ships while their main weapons charged to full power. Even the Prometheus, with all its advanced technology, couldn't be in 3 places at once, not with targets that size. But Colonel Mitchell apparently had other ideas. The 3 holographic projections of the Prometheus suddenly converged on the real ship, merging back into a single vessel that began to glow with an intensity that forced Marcus to shield his eyes. Energy readings from the human dreadnought spiked beyond anything their sensors could accurately measure. All ships in the system, Ida announced over the communication channel. Please move to a minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers from the Prometheus. The Prometheus package is being deployed. What's the Prometheus package? Marcus asked, but he was already ordering Lieutenant Kim to increase their distance from the human warship. The answer came not in words, but in the form of a weapon that redefined Marcus's understanding of what was possible. The Prometheus fired a single projectile, a sphere of writhing energy that seemed to bend space around itself as it traveled. When it reached the center of the hegemony formation, it simply expanded. The expansion happened in complete silence, a growing sphere of distorted space-time that consumed everything it touched. Hegemony ships, fighters, debris, even the fortress stations themselves were absorbed into the growing anomaly. For 30 seconds, the sphere continued to expand, erasing the enemy fleet from existence. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the sphere collapsed in on itself and vanished, leaving behind nothing but empty space and a fading energy signature that made their instruments flicker. Dr. Vasquez sat in stunned silence for nearly a minute before finding her voice. That was a controlled gravity well collapse. He just created a temporary black hole and used it as a weapon. Marcus could only nod numbly. What they had just witnessed wasn't just advanced technology, it was power on a scale that belonged in the realm of gods, not mortals. The communication system crackled to life, and Colonel Mitchell's voice filled the bridge. He sounded tired but unharmed. Captain Chun, the immediate threat has been neutralized. Please return to the planet's surface for extraction. We have a lot to discuss. An hour later, Marcus found himself back in Mitchell's temporary base, trying to process everything he'd witnessed. The colonel was calmly dismantling his equipment as if he hadn't just single-handedly destroyed an entire invasion fleet. Colonel, Marcus began, what I just saw, is this what human military technology is really capable of? Mitchell paused in his work, his expression becoming thoughtful. Captain, what you saw today represents the absolute cutting edge of human military development. The Prometheus and ships like her are the result of decades of research into exotic physics and weapons technology. Ships like her? There are more. 7 others, last I knew, each one designed for deep space operations against numerically superior enemies. Mitchell sealed the container and marked it for transport. The Terran Defense Force learned some hard lessons during humanity's expansion into space. We're not the biggest species, not the oldest, not the most numerous. If we're going to survive in a galaxy full of aliens who might see us as threats or resources to be exploited, we need advantages they don't expect. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. The enhancements you mentioned, are there other humans with your capabilities? A few hundred scattered across human space. We're different from baseline humans. Enhanced reflexes, improved pattern recognition, the ability to interface directly with advanced AI systems. Mitchell touched a device on his temple. Ida and I share a neural link that allows us to operate the Prometheus as a single entity rather than a human commanding a ship. Marcus was beginning to understand the implications. The hegemony doesn't know about any of this, do they? They know humans exist, but they've classified us as a minor species based on limited contact with our civilian vessels and standard military units. Mitchell's smile was predatory. They have no idea what we're really capable of when properly motivated. And the coalition? Marcus asked. You said they'd fallen, but the coalition did fall, but not completely, Mitchell interrupted. There are scattered resistance cells throughout their former territory, and several member species managed to evacuate significant portions of their population before the hegemony took control. He activated a holographic display showing a star map of local space. Large sections were marked in red, indicating hegemony control, but Marcus could see pockets of blue representing free coalition territory and yellow zones marking contested space. The problem is that the resistance groups don't have the coordination or resources to mount an effective counterattack, Mitchell continued. They're fighting a holding action at best. Dr. Vasquez studied the map, but with human technology and capabilities like yours. Exactly. One enhanced human with proper support can take on an entire fleet. A team of enhanced humans with coalition intelligence and logistical support could potentially liberate this entire sector. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. You're talking about escalating this conflict, bringing humanity into a galactic war. Mitchell's expression became serious. Captain, humanity is already in this war, whether we acknowledge it or not. The hegemony's expansion won't stop with this sector. Our intelligence indicates they're already scouting routes toward human space. He highlighted several star systems on the map, showing potential invasion corridors that led directly toward Earth's outer colonies. In 6 months, maybe a year, they'll have consolidated their control over the coalition territories and begun looking for new targets. When they do, they'll find us. Marcus stared at the map, seeing the inevitable trajectory of conflict that would bring the hegemony into direct contact with humanity. So what do you recommend? I recommend that you take your ship and crew back to Earth as quickly as possible, Mitchell replied. Tell them everything you've seen here. Tell them about the coalition resistance, about the hegemony threat, and about what one human with proper resources was able to accomplish. He handed Marcus a data crystal that contains complete technical specifications for the weapons and defensive systems you witnessed today, along with intelligence reports on hegemony capabilities and strategic assessments of the current situation. What about you? Dr. Vasquez asked. I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing, disrupting hegemony operations and supporting coalition resistance efforts. But I can't do it alone forever. Mitchell looked directly at Marcus. Humanity needs to decide whether it wants to face the hegemony threat reactively, from a position of weakness, or proactively, while we still have the advantage of surprise. Marcus pocketed the data crystal, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. How long do you think we have to make the decision? Months, maybe weeks. The hegemony is consolidating faster than expected. Mitchell's expression darkened. But, Captain, there's something else you need to know. Something that makes this situation even more urgent. He activated another section of the holographic display, showing long-range sensor data from deep space. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive hyperspace signatures moving toward this sector from the direction of the galactic core. The hegemony isn't just a local threat. They're part of something much larger. The display showed what appeared to be dozens of massive objects traveling through hyperspace, each one several times larger than the fortress stations they'd just destroyed. An invasion fleet? Marcus asked. Worse. According to intercepted communications, it's an extermination fleet. The hegemony has decided that this entire sector contains too many problematic species to be worth conquering. They're planning to sterilize every inhabited world and start over with their own colonies. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. How many people are we talking about? Conservative estimates? 800 billion sentient beings across 47 different species. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just about stopping an invasion. It was about preventing genocide on an unimaginable scale. When will this extermination fleet arrive? Dr. Vasquez asked quietly. Mitchell checked his tactical display one more time. 6 weeks. Maybe 7 if we're lucky. Marcus stood up slowly, his mind racing through the implications. Colonel, I need to ask you something directly. If humanity decides to intervene, can we actually stop this? Not just the local hegemony forces, but this extermination fleet. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, staring at the strategic display. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Captain, if humanity commits fully to this fight, if we deploy our enhanced forces with proper support and coordination, we can do more than stop the extermination fleet. We can end the hegemony as a galactic threat permanently. He looked up at Marcus with eyes that burned with determination. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is whether humanity is ready to take its place as a major power in galactic affairs. As Marcus prepared to leave for Earth with the most important intelligence report in human history, he couldn't shake the feeling that the next few weeks would determine not just the fate of the coalition species, but the future of humanity itself. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was about to discover just how dangerous it could be when properly motivated. The emergency session of the Terran Defense Council had been in continuous session for 3 days. Captain Marcus Chun sat in an observation gallery, watching as the most powerful military and political leaders in human space debated the future of their species based on the intelligence he'd brought back from his encounter with Colonel Mitchell. Admiral Sarah Thorne, head of the TDF Strategic Command, stood before a massive holographic display showing the current galactic situation. The display painted a grim picture. Red zones indicating hegemony control had expanded significantly even in the 2 weeks since Marcus's return to Earth. The situation has deteriorated faster than Colonel Mitchell predicted, Admiral Thorne announced to the assembled council. Our deep space monitoring stations confirm the approach of what can only be described as an extermination fleet. Current estimates put their arrival in this sector at 4 weeks, not 6. President Elena Rodriguez, the civilian head of the Terran government, leaned forward in her chair. Admiral, I need you to be absolutely clear about what you're recommending. Are you seriously suggesting that humanity should intervene in an alien war? Madam President, I'm suggesting that we're already in this war, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, Admiral Thorne replied. The hegemony expansion will reach our territories within a year. We can either fight them on our terms, with allies, or we can wait for them to choose the time and place. General Marcus Webb, head of the TDF Special Operations Division, activated another section of the display. The technical analysis of Colonel Mitchell's weapons and capabilities has been completed. Our engineering teams confirm that the technology is reproducible, and we have the resources to equip a significant force within 3 weeks. Marcus watched the debate with growing anxiety. He delivered his report faithfully, including every detail of what he'd witnessed at Kepler's Edge. The politicians and generals had been analyzing and debating the information for days, while somewhere in space, billions of sentient beings waited unknowingly for either salvation or extermination. Dr. Elizabeth Chun, no relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, stood up from her position at the Science Advisory Panel. Council members, I've had a chance to review the cultural and psychological profiles that Captain Chun compiled on the various coalition species. We're not just talking about military allies here. We're talking about entire civilizations that could contribute significantly to human knowledge and technology. She gestured to the display, highlighting several coalition worlds. The Zephyrians alone have mathematical and engineering capabilities that could advance human space technology by decades. The Crystalline Collective has biological sciences that could revolutionize medicine. If we allow the hegemony to exterminate these species, humanity loses potential allies and knowledge that could be invaluable to our future development. President Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Chun makes a valid point about the potential benefits, but I'm more concerned about the costs. Admiral Thorne, what are we looking at in terms of human casualties if we commit to this intervention? Admiral Thorne consulted her tactical assessments. Based on Colonel Mitchell's performance data and our projections for enhanced human forces, we estimate casualties in the range of 5 to 8% of deployed personnel. However, if we allow the hegemony to consolidate their control and eventually attack human space directly, casualties could reach into the millions of civilians. The room fell silent as the council members absorbed the implications. Marcus could see the weight of decision settling on their faces. The choice between risking thousands of military personnel now or millions of civilians later. General Webb cleared his throat. There's another factor to consider. Our intelligence analysis of hegemony technology and tactics suggests that they're used to fighting defensive wars against numerically superior but technologically inferior opponents. They've never faced an enemy that could match or exceed their technological capabilities while maintaining superior mobility and tactical flexibility. You're saying they don't know how to fight humans? President Rodriguez asked. I'm saying they don't know how to fight enhanced humans with proper support and coordination, Webb replied. Colonel Mitchell's success wasn't just due to advanced technology. It was due to tactical thinking and adaptability that the hegemony apparently can't counter. Marcus found himself thinking about Colonel Mitchell, still out there somewhere in contested space, continuing his one-man war against impossible odds. The man had asked him to tell humanity what was possible when they committed fully to a fight. Now Marcus was watching that commitment being debated by people who would never face the consequences of their decisions personally. Admiral Thorne activated a new section of the display, showing deployment scenarios and tactical projections. If the Council authorizes intervention, we're prepared to deploy Task Force Prometheus within 2 weeks. 12 enhanced personnel with supporting vessels and AI systems, along with a fleet support group of conventional forces. 12 people. President Rodriguez sounded incredulous. You're suggesting that 12 individuals can stop an extermination fleet? Madam President, General Webb interjected. Colonel Mitchell destroyed a 68-ship battle fleet single-handedly. 12 enhanced operatives, working in coordination with coalition resistance forces, could potentially neutralize the hegemony's entire military presence in this sector. Marcus watched the faces around the council chamber, seeing the mixture of doubt, hope, and fear as they grappled with decisions that would affect billions of lives. Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. A subtle shift in the tactical display that Admiral Thorne apparently hadn't yet seen. Admiral, Marcus called out from the observation gallery. I think you need to look at the long-range sensor data. Admiral Thorne turned to the display, and her face went pale as she processed what the sensors were showing. Council members, we have a new development. The hegemony extermination fleet has accelerated. New arrival estimate is 14 days. The chamber erupted in urgent discussions as the timeline for their decisions suddenly collapsed. President Rodriguez called for order, her voice cutting through the chaos. Admiral Thorne, given this new timeline, what are our options? We have 2 choices, Madam President. We can authorize immediate deployment of Task Force Prometheus with whatever resources we can mobilize in the next week, or we can begin evacuation procedures for our outer colonies and prepare for a defensive war. Marcus found himself standing up in the observation gallery, driven by a sudden need to speak. Madam President, if I may? President Rodriguez looked up at him, and Marcus saw recognition in her eyes. She knew he was the man who had brought this crisis to their attention. Captain Chun, you've been closer to this situation than anyone else in this room. What's your assessment? Marcus looked around at the assembled leaders, feeling the weight of their attention. Madam President, I've seen what one enhanced human can accomplish when properly motivated and equipped. But more than that, I've seen what the hegemony is capable of when they're not being opposed. He gestured toward the display, showing the approaching extermination fleet. Those aren't just warships out there. According to Colonel Mitchell's intelligence, each of those vessels carries enough firepower to sterilize an entire planetary surface. We're not just talking about conquest, we're talking about the complete elimination of every form of life they encounter. The chamber was completely silent now, every person focused on Marcus's words. The coalition species aren't asking us to conquer the galaxy for them. They're asking us to help them survive long enough to fight for their own freedom. And from what I've seen of human capabilities, we're probably the only species in this region of space that can give them that chance. President Rodriguez studied him for a moment. Captain, are you recommending that humanity commit to this intervention? Marcus thought about Colonel Mitchell, alone in his enhanced warship, fighting a war that should have been impossible for one person to win. He thought about Counselor Veth and the other coalition leaders who had trusted a human stranger with their desperate hope for survival. Most of all, he thought about the 800 billion people who would die if humanity chose to look the other way. Madam President, I'm recommending that humanity choose to be what Colonel Mitchell believes we can be. The species that stands up when others can't, that fights when others won't, and that find a way to win when victory seems impossible. Admiral Thorne stepped forward. Madam President, if we're going to act, we need authorization within the next 6 hours to begin deployment procedures. President Rodriguez looked around the chamber at the faces of the council members. Marcus could see the decision crystallizing in her expression, the moment when a leader chooses between safety and responsibility. Admiral Thorne, you have authorization for immediate deployment of Task Force Prometheus. General Webb, I want every enhanced operative we have ready for combat operations within 48 hours. She stood up, her voice carrying the authority of absolute command. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity is going to war. The chamber exploded into activity as military personnel began coordinating deployment procedures. Marcus found himself swept along in the controlled chaos, his role as intelligence liaison making him essential to the mission planning process. 6 hours later, he stood on the observation deck of the TDF battleship Defiant, watching as the most advanced military force humanity had ever assembled prepared for deployment. 12 enhanced operatives, each one equipped with neural interfaces and advanced AI support systems. 36 supporting vessels, including 4 experimental dreadnoughts similar to Colonel Mitchell's Prometheus, and a fleet support group of 200 conventional warships with their crews. Dr. Vasquez joined him at the observation window, her scientific equipment having earned her a place on the expedition as a technical advisor. "Captain, do you think we're doing the right thing?" she asked quietly. Marcus watched as the enhanced operatives conducted final systems checks on their vessels. Each one of them carried the same predatory calm he'd seen in Colonel Mitchell, the look of humans who had been transformed into something more dangerous than nature had ever intended. "Dr. Vasquez, I keep thinking about something Colonel Mitchell told me. He said the question wasn't whether we could win, but whether humanity was ready to take its place as a major power in galactic affairs." He pointed to the assembled fleet. "I think we just answered that question." As the fleet prepared for the hyperspace jump that would take them back to the war zone, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to witness something unprecedented. The moment when humanity announced to the galaxy that it would no longer be underestimated. The hegemony had made the mistake of threatening humans and their potential allies. They were about to learn why that was a fatal error. Admiral Thorne's voice echoed throughout the fleet over the communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Thorne. In 15 minutes, we will depart for the Coalition territories to join Colonel Mitchell in stopping the hegemony extermination fleet. This mission will demonstrate to the galaxy that humanity stands with those who fight for freedom and against those who would commit genocide." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried a note of fierce pride. "Today, we show the galaxy what humans are truly capable of when we unite for a righteous cause. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump." As the stars stretched into lines and Task Force Prometheus disappeared into hyperspace, Marcus realized that humanity had just crossed a threshold from which there could be no return. They were no longer a minor species hiding at the edge of galactic civilization. They were about to become the people who saved 800 billion lives, defeated an empire, and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The only question now was whether they could accomplish all of that before the extermination fleet arrived. The bridge of the Defiant was a study in controlled tension as Task Force Prometheus emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Marcus Chun, now serving as Admiral Thorne's intelligence liaison, watched the tactical displays populate with data as their sensors swept the surrounding space. "Admiral," called out Commander Lisapar from the tactical station, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. It looks like there's been significant combat activity in the past week." Admiral Thorne studied the displays, her enhanced neural implants allowing her to process tactical information at superhuman speeds. "Show me the battle damage assessment." The main view screen filled with a three-dimensional map of the system, highlighting debris fields and energy residue patterns. What Marcus saw made his jaw drop. Evidence of battles on a scale that dwarfed anything they'd witnessed before. "Ma'am," Commander Park continued, "I count the remains of at least 400 hegemony vessels scattered throughout the system. But there's something else, energy signatures that match Coalition ships, and they're still active." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her sensor console, her face bright with excitement. "Admiral, I'm detecting a massive artificial structure in orbit around the fourth planet. It's a space station, but the design is unlike anything in our databases." Before Admiral Thorne could respond, their communication array activated with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged was unmistakably human, though it carried a note of exhaustion that spoke of weeks of continuous combat. "Task Force Prometheus, this is Colonel Mitchell aboard the Prometheus. Welcome to the party. Admiral Thorne, I assume you're in command of this operation?" "Affirmative, Colonel. Good to hear your voice. What's the tactical situation?" There was a pause before Mitchell responded, and when he did, his voice carried a mixture of pride and grim determination. "Admiral, in the 2 weeks since Captain Shin left this system, we've had some interesting developments. It turns out that reports of the Coalition's complete collapse were greatly exaggerated. The tactical display updated with new information as Mitchell transmitted his intelligence data. Marcus watched in amazement as dozens of Coalition resistance cells appeared on the map, along with refugee fleets and hidden bases scattered throughout the sector. When news spread that a single human had destroyed multiple hegemony fleets, it had an unexpected effect on Coalition morale. Mitchell continued. "Turns out that sometimes all people need to keep fighting is proof that their enemies can be beaten." Admiral Thorne processed the data, her enhanced mind calculating strategic implications at lightning speed. "Colonel, what's your assessment of Coalition military capabilities? They've got the numbers and the determination, but they've been fighting a losing war for months. Their technology is good, but not exceptional, and their tactical doctrine is defensive-minded." Mitchell's transmission paused. "However, they have something we need, detailed intelligence on the hegemony extermination fleet and its planned targets." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console. "Colonel, what's this massive structure we're detecting near your position?" "That would be Freedom Station, the Coalition's new mobile command base. 3 weeks ago, it was just a collection of refugee ships and salvage. Now it's the headquarters for the largest resistance movement this sector has ever seen." Marcus felt a chill of anticipation. "Colonel, how many Coalition forces are we talking about?" Current estimates put active resistance forces at approximately 2,000 ships of various classes, representing 12 different species. Not enough to stop the extermination fleet alone, but with proper coordination and support. Admiral Thorne finished the thought. "Combined with Task Force Prometheus, we might have enough firepower to make a difference. More than that, Admiral, I've had time to analyze the hegemony's tactical patterns and strategic planning. They have one critical weakness that we can exploit, but it requires perfect timing and coordination between human and Coalition forces." The communication was interrupted by urgent alerts from the sensor stations. Commander Park's voice cut through the bridge chatter with professional calm. "Admiral, massive hyperspace signatures detected at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts, extremely large mass readings." The main view screen shifted to show long-range sensor data. What appeared was a sight that would haunt Marcus's dreams for years to come. A fleet of vessels so massive that each one registered as a small moon on their sensors. The hegemony extermination fleet had arrived 3 days ahead of their most optimistic estimates. "All stations battle alert," Admiral Thorne commanded. "Colonel Mitchell, please transmit rendezvous coordinates for immediate tactical conference." "Already done, Admiral. But you should know, we're not running from this fight. The Coalition leadership has voted unanimously to make their stand here and now." Marcus watched the sensor displays as the extermination fleet began deploying into attack formation. 57 vessels, each one capable of sterilizing an entire planet. Against them stood Task Force Prometheus and a collection of refugee ships that had been fighting a losing war for months. It should have been hopeless. But as Marcus looked around the bridge of the Defiant, he saw something in the faces of the human crew that reminded him of Colonel Mitchell's predatory calm. These people had come here not just to fight, but to win. 2 hours later, Marcus found himself in the most unusual war council he'd ever imagined. The main conference chamber of Freedom Station housed representatives from 12 different species, along with the 12 enhanced operatives from Task Force Prometheus. At the head of the table sat a being Marcus had never expected to see again. "Captain Chun," said Counselor Veth, rising from her chair with what might have been a smile on her alien features. "I am pleased to see that your journey to find Colonel Mitchell was successful, even if the circumstances of our reunion are somewhat dire." Marcus stood and shook hands with the Zephyrian leader, noting the scars and signs of exhaustion that spoke of weeks spent organizing a desperate resistance. "Counselor, I thought the hegemony had captured or killed the coalition leadership." "They captured or killed the leadership that was willing to surrender," Veth replied with a note of steel in her musical voice. "Those of us who chose to fight have been rather more difficult to eliminate." Colonel Mitchell stepped forward, his appearance showing the strain of weeks of continuous combat. "Admiral Thorne, Counselor Veth, we need to begin tactical planning immediately. The extermination fleet is already beginning bombardment preparations for the inhabited worlds in this system." Admiral Thorne activated a holographic tactical display that filled the center of the conference chamber. The display showed the current positions of all forces, human, coalition, and hegemony. "The situation is straightforward," she began. "The hegemony has enough firepower to destroy every inhabited world in this sector within 72 hours. Our combined forces are insufficient to engage them in direct combat. We need a strategy that exploits their weaknesses while maximizing our advantages." A tall, insectoid being with crystalline wings stepped forward. Marcus recognized him as one of the coalition military commanders from the intelligence briefings. "Admiral, our analysis indicates that the hegemony extermination vessels are heavily armed, but poorly defended against fast-moving targets. They're designed to bombard stationary planets, not fight mobile opponents." Colonel Michel nodded. "That matches my observations. Their capital ships are powerful, but slow to maneuver. However, they've learned from their previous encounters with human forces. They're deploying massive fighter screens and defensive platforms to protect their heavy units." Dr. Vasquez consulted her portable scanner. "I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their fleet. Each extermination vessel requires approximately 6 hours to charge its primary bombardment systems. If we could force them to discharge those weapons prematurely..." Admiral Thorne's enhanced mind seized on the implications immediately. "We force them to waste their bombardment charges on military targets, then attack while their primary weapons are cycling." Counselor Veth leaned forward. "The coalition forces could serve as bait, drawing the extermination fleet into premature bombardment of our ships while your enhanced forces position for attack." Marcus felt a chill at the implications. "You're talking about sacrificing coalition ships to create an opening for Task Force Prometheus." "No," said Colonel Mitchell firmly. "We're talking about using coalition mobility and numbers to create tactical opportunities while minimizing casualties through superior coordination." He gestured to the tactical display, which began showing movement patterns and attack vectors. "The hegemony expects us to fight like every other species they've encountered, defensively, reactively, trying to preserve our forces while they systematically destroy our worlds." Admiral Thorne smiled with the same predatory calm Marcus had seen in Colonel Mitchell. "Instead, we're going to fight like humans. Aggressively, proactively, and with complete commitment to victory regardless of the odds." The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation and coordination as human and coalition forces prepared for what everyone understood would be the decisive battle for the sector. Marcus found himself serving as a communications liaison, helping to coordinate between human tactical doctrine and coalition command structures. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its requirements. Task Force Prometheus would divide into 3 attack groups, each one targeting a specific section of the extermination fleet. Coalition forces would execute a series of coordinated strikes designed to force the hegemony to deploy their bombardment weapons against mobile targets. When the enemy's primary weapons were cycling and vulnerable, the human forces would execute simultaneous attacks on the extermination fleet's command vessels and power systems. The goal was to cripple or destroy the entire fleet before they could complete their bombardment preparations. It was a plan that required perfect timing, flawless coordination, and more luck than Marcus was comfortable depending on. But as he watched the enhanced operatives brief their AI partners and coalition commanders coordinate with their fleet elements, he began to believe it might actually work. The battle began at dawn, ship time. Marcus watched from the bridge of Freedom Station as hundreds of coalition vessels moved into attack position, their formation designed to present the most threatening possible target to the hegemony fleet. The response was immediate and devastating. Massive energy beams erupted from the extermination vessels, vaporizing coalition ships with each shot. But for every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared from different vectors, forcing the hegemony to constantly adjust their targeting and preventing them from focusing on any single target. First phase complete, reported Admiral Thorne over the communication network. Hegemony bombardment weapons are cycling. All Task Force Prometheus units begin attack runs. What followed was a display of coordinated violence that redefined Marcus's understanding of space combat. 12 enhanced humans, each one partnered with an advanced AI and equipped with experimental weapons, launched simultaneous attacks on different sections of the extermination fleet. But this wasn't the chaotic individual combat Marcus had witnessed with Colonel Mitchell. This was something new, coordinated pack hunting on an interstellar scale. The enhanced operatives moved in perfect synchronization, their neural links allowing them to share tactical information and coordinate attacks within human precision. The hegemony fleet, designed to intimidate and overwhelm through sheer firepower, found itself facing an enemy that refused to be intimidated and couldn't be overwhelmed. Human forces appeared from multiple directions simultaneously, struck with devastating effectiveness, then vanished before the enemy could respond. Within 2 hours, the extermination fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind the burning wreckage of half their number. The coalition resistance, reinforced by human technology and tactics, had achieved what everyone said was impossible. As Marcus watched the last of the hegemony vessels disappear into hyperspace, he realized that something fundamental had changed in the balance of galactic power. Humanity had announced its presence not as supplicants or junior partners, but as equals who could stand alongside the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the observation lounge of Freedom Station, watching as representatives from 47 different species gathered for what was being called the Treaty of Alliance. The document being signed would establish humanity as a full partner in a new galactic coalition dedicated to mutual defense and cooperation. Colonel Mitchell joined him at the observation window, looking more relaxed than Marcus had ever seen him. "So, Captain, what's next for you? I assume Terran Command has some ideas about how to use your experience with interspecies relations." Marcus smiled. "Actually, they've offered me a position as humanity's first ambassador to the coalition. Apparently, someone needs to help coordinate this new alliance." "Good choice," Mitchell replied. "We're going to need people who understand that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons." As Marcus watched the signing ceremony below, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. A simple cargo run had turned into first contact, which had led to humanity's first interstellar war, which had culminated in the formation of the galaxy's newest and most powerful alliance. But more than that, It had proven something that Colonel Mitchell had believed from the beginning, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its weapons, but its willingness to stand up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. The hegemony had learned the hard way why underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. The rest of the galaxy was about to learn what humans could accomplish when they had allies worth fighting for. As the ceremony concluded and representatives from dozens of species began planning their shared future, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Colonel Mitchell had been right about one thing. Humanity was definitely ready to take its place as a major power in galactic affairs. They just needed to make sure they used that power wisely.